welcome on my first step ever. This is a very exciting phase and a place and a platform created just for you, everyone who's listening to us out there, watching us today. And in each episode, I am very grateful to the guest speakers who choose to come here and share a bit of their journey and let us peep inside their head, their lives, of how they have created themselves, how they have built the conviction in what they want to do and taken the actionable steps so that you, my friend, can do that for you as well. So, without wasting any more minute, I want to just get down today and introduce my guest speaker because I think this is the first time someone from this particular industry is making a guest appearance on this platform. So it's very special for me. I would love to welcome Shaun de Vries. He is the founder and Chief Hospitality Strategist. Shaun brings a wealth of experience from over 25 years in the industry and his background as a venue owner. His deep understanding of the industry's challenges and his strategic approach to business improvement have been pivotal in his consultancy success. So I would like to add a little bit more over here. At the helm of Open Pantry Consulting, which is Shaun's consulting service, his mission is to empower Australia's hospitality leaders through strategic advisory and operational expertise. Now, this is quite unique, because so far I've only been hearing about consultants helping people in their business, like overall generic business, or helping people in startups, or helping entrepreneurs with tech. That's why I said this is a very interesting blend of your expertise that is being imparted to the people in the hospitality industry, which is such a unique yet a very widespread industry everywhere, and we love hospitality industry, but there's a lot that goes into it. So I would love to kind of get into your head and understand that why this industry. But before that, their collaborative efforts have shaped the success of many hospitality venues, harnessing the collective knowledge of industry veterans to drive sustainable growth across bakeries, cafes, and restaurants. That's amazing because I think Australia has such a great cafe culture, bakery culture. So if you're ever in Australia, do visit your favorite cafes, and I would love Shaun to let us know what is his favorite cafe before the episode ends. But before that, please join me in welcoming Shaun. Hi, Shaun. Welcome on my first step ever.
Hi, Shani. Great to be on the podcast. Thanks so much for asking me. I've been a listener for a good chunk of time now, so I really appreciate you asking me as a guest and excited to talk about hospitality today.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast. I would love to get started with, where it all began for you, which is your growing up days. Would love to understand what was the kind of surroundings, that you were brought up in, the kind of people that you were around, the mindset. Did you have any sort of very, strong influences while growing up as a kid?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and bred from Adelaide, and it's kind of a full circle moment coming back to South Australia now after sort of 10 years, 11 years being away from living here. And I've always been really fortunate coming from my family background is the fact that we've owned fruit orchards for all of my life in the Riverlands and country South Australia. My parents owned some food ice cream businesses early on in my life. So I was really lucky to be around, profit and loss statements, operational conversations, food, produce, like all my career, right? So even though it probably took me a long time to work out kind of what I wanted to do, by like 14, 15, I knew I wanted to be in the hospitality industry. I wanted to either make a product that people were excited to eat or drink or develop people. At an early age, I sort of knew that I was a really good connected with others and wanted to have an industry where I'd feel I had a really good influence. And I found that making something, making a cake, making dinner for my family was a really heartwarming and empathetic thing for me to do. And that made me, really want to do hospitality early. So originally I wanted to be a chef and I tried to be an apprentice chef at sort of 14, 15 and got knocked back. I did a couple of interviews with some major hotel groups. And they said, we don't think you're sort of ready enough, which was fine. A bit of an ego hit, but it was fine. And I had a bakery open up around the corner from me when I was about 16 and a half. So most Australians would know, and New Zealanders and even Canadians would know a brand called Bakes Delight, called Cobb's Bread in North America. But I started with them as a baker's assistant and And while I was doing year 12, was working about 20 hours a week on the weekends and also one day during the week, learning how to ice product in the cabinet, learning how to make basic doughs, being there with other bakers, being part of that camaraderie, and really forming this love of hospitality and making a product which people got to take home every day. I thought was a really nourishing thing for myself, while I was nourishing others, obviously, with a really great food product. And the thing I love about bakeries and cafes, especially, and even bars and pubs to some degree, is that it's the part of the hospitality industry which a customer will come to you a lot, right? So a bakery, you might come every other day. A cafe, you probably go into every day if you really like it. So then you, as a hospitalitarian, like, you form connection with those customers who are coming in every day, and you see, their kids grow up and you hear about their life stories and you have that connection and you're building community. And that's the reason why I've stayed in the industry for such a long time, because I really believe that hospitality is the connector for change in our communities, and is one of the most important parts of people feeling connected with something that isn't their family. And yeah, with regards with our consulting business, like that's what we work with. We work with clients all around the country to create better hospitality experiences by way of operational improvement and technology and recruiting the right team and all that kind of thing. But we also try and work with those employees inside those client businesses as well, and give them some real guidance on how they can move their future forward, because the hospitality industry's had a very hard 5 or 6 years, and we need as many great people to stay in our industry as we can, because then we can have the long-lasting change that is so important to so many communities. So, yeah, that's kind of what we do.
Sean, this is quite a unique conversation for me because it's not very casual for me to sit with a hospitality veteran and talk about their industry and to see your passion from your growing days. It's very nice to hear how it all started for you and why are you in the business still, given that recently we had such a challenging time for the hospitality industry, and to still keep your hopes in on that particular thing and actually bounce back and also help other people in your industry to keep working on that is excellent. So what I'm going to do is right now I would love to chat about your business as well, but I would like to take a few steps back and refocus on you as a teenager. You mentioned something that around 15 or 16, by the time you were getting acquainted to all the profit laws, operational side of the business, you were on the farms and you knew what is actually going on behind the scenes because your father was in the business. Now, as a teenager, because you're still growing up, you have many options out there. We are very curious. Sometimes you're distracted as well. Our mind is distracted. You want to do a lot of things.
Mm.
How were you as a teenager? Like, were you very focused? Did that really make you curious, learning everything that's going around, or was it like you that was the only thing that's happening? So you were in a way, learning it on the way. How was it for you?
It's a really good question. I think I'm fortunate to have really great parents who said to me, do whatever you want to do and we'll support you in doing that. So that gave me the confidence to do what I really knew I loved, which was making a product for people at that early stage and seeing the reaction that would give them. So I was fortunate in that respect. I think I'm also the youngest of three. So because of that, I think I had the ability to see what my brother and sister had done, how they'd been successful. They don't come from the hospitality industry, but how they've been successful in their own sort of things they wanted to do. They were very entrepreneurial at a young age. That gave me the freedom to also be entrepreneurial from quite a young age, even though that took me sort of 5 years. Like, I owned a bakery at 21. It gave me the freedom to sort of take those risks and take those opportunities as they sort of come up. I think when I look back now, and even though I probably saw it then, but certainly not in the same context, like, I had my first boss was an amazing mentor and is a person I still talk with today. I caught up with him for a beer like a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, that's 25 years, right? Like, that's
That's
incredible to still
yeah.
have that connection with someone. So for someone to have that ability and trust in someone who's 16, 17, 18, 19, finished with them when I was 20, like, to have someone who would trust you with a $500,000 investment to go and manage and run those bakeries. That's where I sort of built my career, was managing bakeries and then looking after their second bakery. I was fortunate to have a lot of trust really early on from people that I trusted, and that gave me the ability to know how to manage people further on in my career, into my 20s, my early 30s, as I started to run bigger businesses and those kind of things. So being very fortunate with the hands I've been dealt. I'm also, I realise my standing in the industry. I'm fortunate that I'm a male, and in regards with leadership roles and stuff like that, like I'm going to get at the time I started, I'm going to get noticed for those kind of reasons. And what we're trying to do now is really promote diversity in leadership, female leadership in regards with hospitality, because the hospitality industry needs to evolve and change and grow. But I realised where my career has started from, and now we're just trying to leave a legacy to leave a better industry. But I think the early part of my career was a blend of being in the right place at the right time, but working really hard to be in the right place at the right time, and taking the opportunities as they come up, and taking risks, calculated risks. And sometimes they worked, a lot of times they didn't, but I've been able to recover from those times that they haven't.
That's an excellent point you've made over there, Sean, that you were, at the right place at the right time. But definitely it's your hard work that's gone in there that has made it. And I feel it's always the combination of these three things: right place, right time, right people.
Mm.
But even to make the most out of these three situations, you need to be at your best to make the most out of the situation. So I can see that how you were so invested in what was happening around when you were growing up. Two things I would like to kind of delve into, something that you mentioned over here. The first thing I like to kind of just pause and reflect on a particular situation, because I think a lot of people who are listening to us today, failure, rejections are part of our life, but somehow it has become very difficult for us to process that. It has become more like a tag for us, that we are a failure. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like this, I failed in this situation, but it's more like I am the failure. So because at early days you wanted to be a chef and you were pretty stoked about it and you gave all your best, whatever you could, but it did not really materialize into the way that you wanted. How did you manage that situation and get out of that mindset, or utilize your energies in starting your first bakery business?
Great questions. I think if I go back to my mentor, so my mentor, Greg, had been a chef previously with hotel groups overseas and also in Australia. And when I started to work with him and the rest of the team, he realized that I probably had some skill. And he said, look, you can be a chef if you want to, and I can go and place you in a particular role if you want to. I've got lots of connections in the industry. If you want to go and do that and be an apprentice chef, then I'll support you in doing that. But I think you've got the capability to do this in regards with the bakery that myself and my wife are starting to build. We want to do a second bakery pretty soon. Like, that could be something you move into and go and run. Like, I'll support you in either way. So again, it was me working hard, showing up at the right time, getting opportunity when it was there and when it was open. So instinctively knowing what the right thing to do was, and being able to take a risk. Right, you're 17, you're 18, you got a lot of time. So the ability to take high risk then is really smart. It's a really smart play. So I did that, and he ended up buying that second bakery. When it worked in that for a period of time, and then I managed that, I think at probably just before I turned 20 from memory. So I went and managed this bakery with 20 odd people who were working there at that time. Managed all the production, the rosters for all the team, all the sales for the week, like all the cash that was coming through the business, like going and taking that to them to then go bank, like all these different things, understanding the business. And then when I was about 20 and a half, he and his wife said to me, "Do you want to go and lease this bakery off us?" And I wanted to go and do that, right? So I went to the franchisor, so Back to the Light, and they said, "Oh, we don't want to do that. We think you're a bit young." So I would have been the younger leaseor in Australia, out of about 300 bakeries at that stage. So I said, okay. So I continued to work and for him and continue that role. And then at about 21, there was an opportunity with a bakery that the franchisor owned, and they said, "Do you want to buy this? You're over 21 now. We think that's sort of this number that we were looking for in order for you to take this opportunity. Do you want to buy that off the company and then purchase that business?" And so that's what I did. So I became the youngest franchise partner in Australia, which was a pretty cool thing at that point. And that was a big shell shock for me. Like I went from, working sort of 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week to probably 80 hours a week, and there was periods of months where I didn't have a day off. So there was a period in the business where it was so tough and so financially on a knife's edge that I worked three months in a row every single day, 7 days a week, at least 10 to 12 hours a day in order to make sure that I could keep the doors open and pay my staff and pay my suppliers to get through this challenging time. So yeah, there were a lot of times where I was like, why did I make this decision for? But, I pushed through and I was able to grind it out for sort of probably 4 years in that particular bakery. And then I had another opportunity come up to be a multi-site bakery owner. So unfortunately there was a franchise partner who owned, I think if I remember, five bakeries, and he unfortunately went bankrupt. Those bakeries went back on the market. Bakes Delight offered me to buy one of those bakeries. So I had two bakeries all of a sudden, and sort of went down that path of a multi-site franchise owner. So I was the youngest multi-siter in Australia at that point at like 26. All cool things to think about and say out loud, but like it was really hard.
Sean, thank you so much for taking me through, your journey and letting us know that how you claimed so many, amazing things at such a young age. But as you mentioned, and as I can see, there's a lot of hard work that's gone into it. Before we move into, how things panned out for you when you had become the owner of multi bakery businesses in Australia, I would love to pause over here and, ask that poignant question because it is very necessary for everyone who's out there, listening to us to understand that what is okay, the kind of number of hours that you would like to take on, why would you like to do it particularly for yourself, what is okay, what's not okay, and how does it really work out in the entire scheme of things when it's the going really gets tough.
Yeah, really great question. I think the reason why I continue to work that hard is I financially had to. So I think when you've got a bank account which you need to fill and you need to try and trim your expenses as I did, that's the reason why I did that. I didn't feel like I had an option. I didn't want to trade insolvent. I had responsibilities. I had personal guarantees against my name. I was the sole director. If they decided to deem that I was insolvent or anything like that, then I had a bank who could, take money from my parents and that kind of stuff. They were the guarantor of the loan. So it was a pretty tricky time, I think. But I think now the industry and I think people's perception of how a work-life balance, whatever that is for people, has dramatically changed. So with our recruitment, and I speak to lots of chefs and lots of venue managers and bakers every day, a lot of people who have been in the industry for at least 15 to 20 years have probably worked as much a week as I have, 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours a week. And they were largely told to do that because they had to, and they felt like that was a part of the job, and that was part of being a chef, or part of being a great baker, or part of being a great venue manager, or as a badge of honor in a way. But what we've seen, and why the hospitality industry's been seen as not a career to some, is that's a big challenge to keep up in the long term. So I don't advocate for people to work those hours for a long period of time. Even if it's their own business. If it's their own business, like they need to look at their business and see how they can't work that, because nothing is as important as yourself. And at the end of the day, it's just another cup of coffee. It's just another loaf of bread. It's just another plate of food. The most important person in hospitality and any business is that owner, and your team of it. So I think now my advice is probably work the required hours that you have to. So 38 hours for a full-time person. Most managers will work up to sort of 45 hours, and I think that's completely fine. That's how managers should run, and sometimes you work 38 or less, and sometimes you work up to 45, not for long periods of time. But just putting yourself in the right position, understanding your core group of people who you trust, between sort of 3 to 10 people, who you can tell things about how you're feeling and how you're going, who can give you advice on what opportunity you should take next based on opportunities that they may have taken, and putting yourself in brands and in situations where you're more likely to be successful. So I was fortunate to work with up and coming brands early on in my career, in my first 2 or 3 different roles. And that gave me an opportunity to move through those organizations and do different things, not leave, get excited, get energized, and continue to grow and learn. And that's the reason why I've been in the industry for such a long time, is because the hospitality industry is very unique in the fact that you can be a barista, a venue manager, a publican, a baker, a chef, a hotel manager, a hospitality trainer, a supply chain planner. Like, there's so many different things you can do in our industry. There's no real reason to leave the industry. You can just support it in different ways. So that's the reason why I keep engaged. And I think that's why I think it's one of the best industries to be a part of, is because it gives you a lot of opportunity, a lot of scope to do different things, no matter what stage of life you are. So I think my advice to people who are listening, who are in that pocket of like under 30, because that's when you'll make the best decisions about your career, is work with brands that care about you, who pay you on time, who don't flog you, who give you an opportunity to sit down with you at least once a year and go through what your development plan is and where you're going in the brand. It should be a hell of a lot more than that, but at least once a year. And go on your gut feel, right? Like, if you're in a situation where you don't, as an employee, where you don't feel safe, where you don't feel heard, and you don't feel looked after, then you should look for another opportunity. There's nothing wrong in being in a brand for a short period of time, as long as you can tell a recruiter or your next boss why. Because every reason is legitimate as long as you're meant to back it up for. So yeah, making sure that you have your own smell test ready to understand what your next what your next change of direction should be.
That was pretty insightful, Shaun. Understanding the hospitality industry a bit in depth over here, I feel. And if we would also like to kind of, just take away what you are trying to tell us about how one needs to kind of navigate their way around, and why must, one keep doing certain things, is because of the goals that you have. What is a negotiable, what is a non-negotiable when it comes to, when you are in your early days, or is, as you mentioned, with a company, with a brand, it is always a give and take. This is very interesting, because I've had many guest speakers on this podcast, and I see that some of the journeys, they stem from a lot of hardship. Like, they don't really have a choice. Sometimes they have certain things to kind of work on, but there are certain people who have it sorted to begin with, but they still have that drive to keep going on. But what's the common factor in these different versions of success is that they do it because they're in it for what they really like. There's something that you like in that only keeps you driving even when it gets tough. So it's like you gotta do what you gotta do. And a very interesting fact that, when we move ahead from your career, I would also like to know that besides the professional development that we can hear from you, how you have beautifully grown over the years in this industry, how do you, if you kind of just reflect on your journey up until this time, when you were becoming the first of many kinds in the industry, how did you feel that you've grown personally around that time?
It's a great question. You're a very good question, Zashani. I think I was going to say hospitality has definitely made me patient.
Yes.
The one reason why I've always been largely empathetic and really wanting to help others, but I think hospitality made me patient, and I wasn't patient at the start. And that's why I think I'm always fortunate that I became a baker and not a chef. And I'm not saying that chefs aren't patient. I'm just saying that when you bake a loaf of bread and it takes at least 3 hours up to 24 hours to go from the start to the end, like, you really care about your preparation, and you're really thoughtful in how you start a process, and you really curate how that product goes through all those different iterations before it becomes a loaf of bread that you can sell to someone. So I think that's just helped me personally become a lot more patient. I think the thing I haven't touched on as well. So I had 2 bakeries. I was 26, 27. I was probably in a bad state. I'd worked too much. I had a bad relationship breakdown, all my own fault. Went out drinking with a friend and got into a car accident. So he had been a driver. I was a front seat passenger, and this car accident was at high speed. The crash enabled me not to work in my businesses for close to 12 months. So I went from working 60, 70 hours a week physically, mentally in my bakeries to nothing. So I had to learn to walk again, how to feed myself again, like all these different things, like all my hands and my arms were completely wrecked and had to just redo all this rehabilitation over a period of 12 months in order to try and get back to baking bread again. So that made me patient and it made me really, really humble. I lost my businesses after that period of time because I burnt through too much cash because I couldn't work in them again. So I built up all this success for a decade and then lost it from one situation. But the problem was that situation went for 12 months, right? So I saw it slowly petering away. So coming from that moment into still wanting to be in the industry and to still want to create change and to, being as positive as I could be was a really tough point in my life. And having to start from scratch again was a very humbling experience and something I couldn't have done by myself. And luckily I had a really supportive family and friends around me who supported me during that time, but also lost a lot of friends during that time as well because of what had happened. So I think I always say the hospitality industry was the thing that saved me. And that is not just hyperbole, that is truth. And the reason why I say that is because the people in the hospitality industry largely do it even if they don't realize it to serve. It's a bit like I'm not trying to like pull myself against other people in other industries, but I think it's very similar to a nurse or a doctor or something like that, or a caretaker. Like you're in someone's life
Service.
for that moment and giving them an experience if you're in a hotel or giving them a product if you're a cafe, restaurant, bakery, whatever it is. So the people in our industry are incredible. And that is what has kept me going this whole time. So I think, like, if I'm to say anything, like all these challenges that have come up in my life, all the success, like they've largely been driven by the fact that it's not just me, it's by the people around me who have supported me during that time, both in and outside the industry, but largely inside the industry because they have an ability to serve and an ability to care. So I think if you're thinking about getting in the hospitality industry and you're young or thinking about a career change, like, just pick a place that you really love to go into and love to experience because those are the places that are the best to work in and the ones that will care about you the most.
But I'm really grateful for you that you kind of opened up and shared a very personal moment of your life over here. Only because I feel that it is going to give out a very loud message out there that whether you're, you know, sort of broken in any way, emotionally or any other way, uh, there is always a chance to, get back to best of your abilities and capabilities. For you, I think it was a very prolonged period of 12 months. And what happens is that you get such a long time to just be yourself, and the voice in your head takes over, and it becomes even more challenging. But
Mm.
I'm glad that you shared, because this just shows your resilience, the resilience of a human who wants to, get back, do things. And as you mentioned, your loved ones were around, and it's very, very, very exciting for me to see that what have you done now post that situation, because you've not only gotten back on your field, but you've multiplied, you have kind of sort of taken your success to the different level,
Mm.
to the point that now you are taking all those experiences that you learned with a very clean heart, with a very clear conscience, and now giving it back to your own industry. And I can now understand that why this industry means so much to you, getting back and coming back into the same place and making it even more bigger and better for other people. So first of all, thank you so much for doing this. And as we have come to the very close, the end of this episode, I would love to touch upon your consultancy, because that's what I think sounds like more like, the entire journey that we have taken with you, Shaun, that's where it culminates, but it's also a new beginning. So please take us through that.
So thank you so much. So we deal with either pre-revenue startup hospitality businesses and helping them through coaching and through content in order to make them open successfully and be with them on the first 6 to 12 months of them opening to make sure they're more successful. The hospitality industry is incredibly tough to be profitable and sustainable, but having a coach and a sounding board there with you, we know creates a more opportunity for that to be long-term sustainable. And then we work with established businesses with challenges around operational excellence, tech analysis, anything to do with people, and obviously organizational structure and training. And then we have a recruitment part of what we do. Independent brands will come to us and say, we need an amazing executive chef or a venue manager or a baker or a production manager. Can you go and source that person for us? We only recruit for the hospitality industry. We recruit all around Australia for the best and brightest, and we're always employee first. So we always want to make sure that employee is going to be a good fit for that particular brand, because I want them to have longevity and have the opportunity to grow. Like I've had the opportunity to grow, and so many people who are connected with me in the industry and stay in the industry, like their opportunity to grow as well. So, I think hospitality is an amazing first job to have. I think it's an amazing 50th job to have, but it can teach you a lot about yourself and teach you a lot about community and patience and resilience. And I think it's just awesome. So we'll continue to support the industry in many different ways, but at the moment, that's what we focus on.
This is lovely. Thank you, Shaun, for being on the podcast, taking me through your journey, you as a person, who you are, why you do what you do, and by the end of this conversation, I can really feel that the hospitality industry is sort of a part of your identity, the love that you have for it, and you're so serious about that work. So let's end on a fun note when I
Okay.
say this. I did say at the very beginning that I will ask you which one is your favorite top cafe, or if you don't want to pick one, maybe give us three that our listeners can probably go into.
Okay, cafe. Melbourne's kind of the home of coffee around Australia. Melbourne's very similar to like Portland in the US and whatnot. They're just amazing coffee roasters, amazing independent brands. So we really love Maker Coffee. So Maker has a number of different outlets across usually the southern sort of suburbs in Melbourne. So that's an amazing place. Terra Twilight and what Yoke Group does. So Terra Twilight's in Collingwood, and they have a number of other locations in Northcote and Thornbury, which are amazing venues, loving what they do. And I think Market Lane was definitely one of the brands that really started coffee roasting in a really responsible way in Australia, thinking about sustainability, B certification, like all these different things, thinking about producers. And they've got a number of different outlets in Melbourne, largely around markets, but also around other places as well. And they were probably the brand that first made me love coffee as much as I do when I first moved to Melbourne, and were kind of a really good connection point to what Melbourne coffee was. So I think those three will probably give you a good indication of what we think is best.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And I would definitely like to try one of those, because probably I would be able to when I fly down over there. And before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you one more thing, that in your journey so far, in your professional or personal journey so far, could you share one particular incident that has made you feel that all this while that what you have done was worth it? If someone has said something to you, you did something for them in your business, that they came back to you and said something, and that always stayed with you, and that does motivate you sometimes when you do feel low.
It's hard to pinpoint one thing, but the probably first thing comes to mind is I was working for Grilled Burgers for probably close to over 6 years. And if people are in Australia, they probably know Grilled. It has about 150 odd locations at the moment. When I joined them, they had about 10. So I was really part of that culture coming up and them being a really big brand, which is incredibly lucky for me. And I was in Queensland for a long period of time, about five and a half years, being a restaurant manager and an area manager and different things. And I had gone through a divorce, unfortunately, and I was running a restaurant at that stage, and I'd made the decision to go to Perth. Grilled had said, "Do you want to go help us with some restaurants over in Perth?" I'd been with the brand a long time. I knew what I was doing, so I decided to do that. And I went to Perth. I'd never actually been to Perth before,
Wow.
and I really struggled. I really struggled for lots of different reasons, but just because I just felt a bit isolated in Perth because it's a long way away from the rest of the country, as people would know who live here. But two things happened. One, the team that I was managing before, a team of about 30, 35 people in this restaurant, sent me a photo of them with the message that said, "We miss you," and sent me a photo of that.
Oh my God.
And the second one was, there was a brewery that I went to probably every week, and I would actually do my rosters in this brewery every week. But the reason I go is, one, I love beer, and the second one is it was just a great brewery and people to be around, and it was amazing. And at that point, when I was by myself, like it was a really important connection point for me. And they had found out from my team, who I run the restaurant, where I was running the restaurant, what restaurant I was in, and they sent me a slab of their beer for free.
Wow.
So I was like, in this, what I felt was isolated place. Like, it's 2.5 hours, time difference between the rest of Australia, 2.5 to 3 hours. But it's those two things, without me saying to anyone that I was struggling, that two people, one, my former team, one was a brand that I love to be around and experience all the time, like, just said, "We care." And it just got me through. It got me through. And that's the power of great hospitality. So, and that's the power of great teams. So, yeah, that's probably the turning point, if I think of it.
This is beautiful. I think this just shows that what, as a person, you have also kind of done for them. It's always a relationship that you build, and once it kind of works, the efforts have been put from both the ends. These are the amazing moments that we see. So thank you so much for sharing this with me, Shaun. It has been really lovely knowing you. I think in the past couple of a few minutes, in a half an hour, I would say, at least come to know a bit more about you as a person and why you do, what's your business. And this is excellent that at first you're a really good human being, and I think that's all that it takes to do anything in your life. So I'm going to leave your links about your LinkedIn, your website link, everything in the show notes. Anyone who would love to know more about you, and the ones who have been eager for hospitality industry, I think you've found the person to follow, listen, interact with. And before we wrap, I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
That's a really good question. I would say, if you continue to do the same thing and get the same result, then you need to think of other things to do, right? Like, I always think, if I'm doing the same thing and I want that thing to change, and I'm getting the same challenge come up, then I need to change course. I need to try and do something different. So don't continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. Like, always know that you need to change course.
That's excellent. And I think that answers a lot of questions that people might have, that why things are not changing in their life. So thank you so much, Shaun, for being my first step ever. It has been a pleasure chatting with you. And I would also like to tell all the listeners out there that start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you next time. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.